Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Math with Mr. W. Our topic today is graphing points. Now, I can tell you right now that when I was in fourth grade, that I know I didn't see any graphing. And probably 30 years ago or 20 years ago, a fourth grader wasn't shown any graphing. Why do you suppose we're shown graphing today as low as fourth grade? Well, as I speak to you today, we're in the throes of a pandemic. The coronavirus is around the world, killing hundreds of thousands of people. Millions and millions are getting this disease. And it's devastating countries. It's devastating the United States right now. But every day on the television set, graphs are thrown at us. Graphs that the television is asking us to understand. As the public, we need to understand. And if we can't understand them, that becomes a real problem. So let's really take this as an important thing. The graphing is started younger because our students, with all the data that they get these days, and I'm talking about tons and tons of data that can be made into graphs and that can be read and understood and have to be read and understood. They need to be a part of your curriculum. So all we're doing today in the fourth grade is just plotting points. We're trying to understand where a point goes on a graph, just where it goes, based on what the numbers are. That's all we're doing. We're not doing anything special. Okay? There's nothing special about the points other than where do they go? So that's my job today. My job is to help you understand how we get a point on a graph, or known as the Cartesian plane. We're named after the great philosopher and mathematician of France, René Descartes, who proved all of Euclid's geometric theorems on a graph. So we honor him by calling this the Cartesian plane. First of all, you're teaching this for the first time to your fourth graders. You're asking them to make a graph. And certainly they've seen the number line that goes this way, otherwise known as the x-axis. The x-axis. They need to put that x right here at the end. They need to remember that this is the x-axis. Label that x-axis. Now they have a vertical axis. It's called the y-axis, the y-axis. Make sure they put a y up here to indicate that they know that that's the y-axis. So we have an x-axis and a y-axis. Now, how do we plot points? Well, first of all, math is real nice. It's alphabetical. X, Y. X comes before Y in the alphabet. It starts first. So every point, no matter where it is on here, X comes before Y. So we do what X is first, and then we do what Y is second to get to where the point is. So let's say I have a point and I just put it right here and I call it X, Y. X is the distance to some place here. So let's make a point right there. It got to this point here, and then it went up here. So If I ask myself, well, what is that point? It looks like it went over to about 6 and it went up to about 4.5. So this would be called 6, 4.5. And that is the labeled point for this dot on the graph. I always go X first. X comes before Y. X comes before Y. So I go X first and then Y second. And that tells me how I get someplace. So I go along the X-axis and I move up or down, indicating the movement along the Y-axis. But I have to get somewhere along the X-axis first based on what the value is on the X-axis. Now, it could be possible that the value for X is 0. So you could have something like this. Let's say my point is A, and I call my point A, and it's 0, 3. Well, the value of X is 0. Well, where is the value of X 0? It's right here. This guy here is 0, 0, because it doesn't move anywhere in this direction. It doesn't move anywhere in this direction. Up or down, left or right. All it does is it stays in one position. So that's 0, 0. And that's called the origin of my graph. So have your students make the graph. Have them put the numbers on the graph. Label the axes, X and Y. And put 0, 0 there. That's the origin. So they know this is my starting place. This is how I start. Okay, I'm just going to different places somewhere out in these 4 different plots. These are called quadrants. And we'll worry about those later on. But right now, all I want to know is, how do I get someplace? And it's up to us as teachers to help our students get where they need to go. So let's say a point B, and we'll start out in the first quadrant, which is the one right here, which is always positive. It's positive, positive, because I'm going positive to the X. And I'm going up on the Y, which is also positive. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm going positive on both of the numbers. Well, let's choose 2 numbers that are positive. And I'll choose 2 and 6. So where is the point 2, 6? Now remember, we've talked about this in geometry, and your students know this. Points don't have dimension. They hold position. And this is a great example of how a point holds position. It doesn't have any dimension. It doesn't go left or right, up or down, backwards or forwards. It doesn't do anything. It just holds a position, has no dimension at all. So I have to go, X is 2. So I count out to 2. Then I count up to 6. And that's my point 2, 6. And I label 2, 6. So my students label it 2, 6. They know where that is. And now you may ask them, is that the same as this? What happens if I change it and I said, what about 6, 2? Is that the same as 2, 6? And just wait. Is 2, 6 the same as 6, 2? And hopefully they're going to say no. Because this time you're going to go 6 here. And then only go up 2 to get to my position 6, 2. So we've got 2, 6 and 6, 2 are definitely different positions. Now, we've got different parts of my graph that I can go to. How do I get to different places? Well, if I have to get to a different place, well, in order for me to get to this side of the graph, X would have to be first a negative number. And now we're sort of being introduced to what we call integers. And we're not actually talking about working with them other than knowing that they are there. And that's the beauty of in the first, second, third grade, even kindergarten, they have them on the floor and the students know they exist. You don't have to spend time working with them other than that they're the opposite of the positives. And it's the opposite of, so it takes them in the other direction. So that's the beauty of it. They've become aware of these numbers. Then they know, let's take point D, and I say it's the opposite of 5. And then I say the Y value is 7. Where is that point? Where is that point? Well, X still has to be first. So I have to decide, I have to go 1, 2, 3, 4, the opposite of 5 first. That takes me back here. And then I get to go up to 7. So this is the opposite of 5, 7. And it's labeled. Your student is labeling it, not with the letter D, but the numbers that tell us what it is. Because if all they do is put the D there, there's not a remembrance of anything. Make sure they put the X and Y values there. So now, of course, you're going to know to get to the points in here, they both have to be numbers that are the opposites or negatives. And to get into this quadrant, the X has to be positive, but in this case, the Y value is negative. So what have we learned? We've learned how to get from 0, 0 to another place on the graph. So that's what we're doing here. We're not learning to draw lines. If you want to expand the idea of drawing lines for your students, you can do that. But right now, what's really, really important at this level is they understand how to get from the origin to any place on the graph. Thank you so much for being here. See you next time on Math with Mr. W.